Hi, I'm Kaya.
And I'm Joanna.
And this is Starlit Citadel Reviews.
Istanbul is a simple economic game with an interesting spatial dimension from Rudiger Dorn and AEG.
In Istanbul, players are merchants leading their assistants through the Istanbul Bazaar in a race to collect the most rubies. It supports from 2 to 5 players and lasts about an hour.
Players begin Istanbul by laying the place tiles in a 4x4 grid and placing the lira, bonus cards, and dice next to this playing area. Each player takes a set of tokens in their color, a reference card, and a wheelbarrow. They place their goods indicators on the leftmost spaces of the wheelbarrow's tracks and place their merchant on top of a stack of 4 assistants at the fountain. Everyone's 5th assistant is set aside, and their family member is placed at the police station.
The demand tiles are shuffled and placed on the markets, and the mosque tiles are sorted and stacked in numerical order on their spaces. A number of rubies equal to the number of players are placed on both mosques and the Wainwright, and 3 wheelbarrow extensions per player are added to the Wainwright space. Rubies are added to the Gemstone Dealer and Sultan's Palace according to the number of players, and the mail indicators are placed in the top row of the post office. The Governor and Smuggler are placed on spaces determined by a die roll. The starting player is chosen, and each player gets their starting lira. Then the game begins.
Each player's turn has 4 phases: movement, encounters with merchants, actions, and other encounters. So during the movement phase, you take your merchant stack and move it either 1 or 2 places. If the target place has one of your assistant tokens in it, you place that token at the bottom of your stack. If it doesn't, then you take the bottommost token from your stack and leave it on that space when you move on next turn. If you cannot pick up or place an assistant, then your turn ends immediately.
If there's another merchant at the target place, you must give their player 2 lira or your turn ends. If your target place is the fountain, you do not have to pay other merchants, and you may still continue your turn even without assistance.
Next, you take your target place's action. The 3 warehouses let you move their associated goods indicator to the far right of its track. The post office lets you collect the 4 resources shown, and then move the leftmost mail indicator to the bottom row.
The Caravansary lets you draw 2 bonus cards from the draw pile or discard pile, and discard 1. Bonus cards can be played at any point during your turn with no limit on their number and are discarded to the Caravansary. The Fountain lets you return any number of assistants to the bottom of your stack.
The Black Market lets you roll a die and gain blue goods based on the result, as well as 1 red, yellow, or green good. The Tea House lets you announce a number between 3 and 12, and collect that many lira if you roll a result equal to or greater than your wager. Otherwise, gain 2 lira.
The 2 markets let you sell 1 to 5 of the goods depicted on the top demand tile at the rate shown. The tile is then moved to the bottom of its stack. If your family member is at the police station, you can send it to another place and take that place's action immediately. Family members do not have encounters.
The Sultan's Palace and Gemstone Dealer let you collect a ruby by paying the set of goods or amount of lira depicted on their track. The Wainwright lets you pay 7 lira for a wheelbarrow extension, which increases your goods tracks. Once you've collected 3 wheelbarrow extensions, you get 1 ruby.
The mosques let you take 1 of their tiles if you have the goods depicted along the tile's top in your wheelbarrow, and spend 1 of them. Each tile gives you a permanent bonus, and you can have 1 of each color. Once you've collected both tiles from a mosque, you get 1 ruby.
After taking an action, the active player has encounters with other players' family members, with the Governor, or with the Smuggler, if any of those are on their place. You send other players' family members back to the police station in exchange for 3 lira or 1 bonus card. The Governor lets you draw 1 bonus card and either discard 1 or pay 2 lira, while the Smuggler lets you gain 1 good and either discard 1 good or pay 2 lira. If you use the Governor or Smuggler, you roll the dice to determine their new location.
Once one player collects 5 rubies, the current round becomes the last round of the game. The player with the most rubies wins, and ties are broken by lira, goods, and bonus cards.
So I had a lot of fun playing Istanbul. It feels a lot like a worker placement game that's just slightly modified a lot of mechanics in order to take away some of the issues with that genre. So what a lot of people don't like about worker placements is the fact that pretty much your only mode of interaction with other players is completely blocking them by preventing them from using your space. It's a fairly harsh interaction, and it's also often the only way in which you really engage with them, so the rest of the game can feel quite solitary. Istanbul really mitigates this by first of all having the interaction with others' workers be soft, in the sense that somebody can still use your space, they just have to give you some money, but it's, still enough to mess up their plans. There's also tons of ways of indirectly interacting with other players by picking up mosque tiles so the next one is more expensive, selling goods at the market so that the demand changes, taking stuff from the gemstone dealer or the Sultan's palace to again increase further costs, or moving the smuggler or the governor around so that they might not be in a position where somebody else can use them. It all adds up to a game that actually feels very engaging between different players. It's got a lot of interaction to it, and it's a lot more social than a lot of similar worker placement games that I've found. I also really like the spatial element of Istanbul. The fact that when you're moving your little stacks of merchants around and dropping off assistance, you're basically creating a breadcrumb trail that you either have to follow back or intersect with at strategic points so that you actually have enough assistance in order to be able to do things. It sort of turns your assistance into a resource to manage, which I think is very interesting. And it also allows a lot of space for spatial thinkers to really work well. In a lot of these kinds of games, you're mostly doing mathematical calculations in your head. Here, you're visualizing paths, you're moving through a physical space, and that can provide a very different way of engaging thinking that I think is really interesting and might make the game a little bit easier to manage and a lot more engaging for a lot of players. The one place where Istanbul falters for me a little bit is the theme. Joanna and I have talked a lot about what thematic games are to us, how we care about kind of the integration of theme with mechanics, how those two need to move in concert and also need to make sense in the broader context of the game world. And to me, this game is a really great example of that just not really happening, because there's one element that's just utterly bizarre, and it's the family member. For some reason, there is this person who you have to routinely bust out of jail in order to send them to do other things, and they then get rearrested and sent back to the police station at least, and you're kind of constantly recirculating them through the market. And in fact, mechanically, they're only really useful to you if they are being arrested routinely, because that's the only way you can then send them out to do other tasks. And this is emphasized to the point that there's actually a bonus card that lets you arrest your own family member, because again, it's so useful to you. So if you're somebody who likes, internal consistency or narrative to your game, all of a sudden you're dealing with this story where most of the time you're just a merchant going about your business in the bazaar, but every once in a while you have to run into like your drunken Uncle Jim, who you send away to do something with the expectation that he's going to get arrested in a couple of minutes, and you're going to have to go back for him, and you're going to do this entire rigmarole again. It's really strange. It takes you out of the game a little bit. It's funny, but if you care about thematic integration, it's something that's gonna really kind of act as a bit of a hiccup in this game.
So another potential drawback to this game is it is one of those games that is very prone to analysis paralysis. So this is a game where you've got a lot of thinking to do, you've got a lot of different options, you've got a lot of different paths you can take, and it's tempting, and probably smart, to start thinking 2 or 3 turns ahead, try and figure out where you're going. Though you can be tempted to start trying to think 4 or 5 or 6 rounds ahead, and then you end up with this really complex map in your head of where you're going to be going. You're leaving your trail of assistance, everything's good, and then somebody throws a wrench in your plans. You're going to have to scrap all of those ideas, come up with a new plan, and you can really get stuck in that. So you can end up staring at the board for a really long time, trying to figure out exactly where the best way to get your next ruby is. And if you're the kind of person who plays with a group that is prone to analysis paralysis, be aware of that, because this game is definitely going to encourage that situation. I enjoyed this game as well, actually. It does have a lot of sort of nice nice changes and nice additions for a traditional worker placement game. It's also very variable. It's got a lot of different ways that you can set up the main city, so you can't sort of learn this game and then lay it out and play it in a specific strategy over and over again. It's going to be changing all the time. You can lay out the tiles differently, several different ways, or you can even randomize them. So that means that the paths between areas in the city is going to change every time you play, so you're going to have to think of a different way to sort of handle that, to manage that, and other people are going to get in your way in different ways, which is nice, makes it replayable. It's also a very accessible game. Some people are a little bit scared of Euro games because they tend to be sort of really thinky. You have to do a lot of strategizing and there isn't much theme. This game does actually make itself quite accessible to new players. It's pretty easy to learn the base mechanics. You're going to be playing and getting your hands dirty and really sort of understanding the basic mechanics quite quickly off the top in your first game. That being said, though, once you start getting into it, you are going to have to strategize. You are going to have to think. You're going to have to plan out. Spatial thinkers are definitely going to have to exercise that part of their brain. So you've got that nice balance between an accessible game that doesn't play in a very long period of time, which is nice, relatively short, and you've got some complex strategy, which is going to keep those people happy. So it's a nice balance here for sure.
Constantinople?